The Dallas Cowboys have officially fired Matt Eberflus. We'll tell you why it happened, how it happened, and who will be their next defensive coordinator on this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're discussing the Cowboys firing defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, why it happened, how it happened, and some candidates that we think the Cowboys will be interested in. First of all, Landon, are you surprised that it happened this quickly?
No, I think that I had hoped that it would happen this quickly. I think that there is obviously some precedent for them dragging their feet, and the Cowboys have been bad about that. But the Cowboys have been operating slightly different these last few months. It feels like this is a different situation than the head coaching situation, right? Where it's obviously it's a less high profile job. It's the decisions can be made a little bit quicker. You felt like the decision was probably already well made several weeks ago, just by the tenor of how folks were speaking up before even today. So I don't know that I was surprised. I think I was more just relieved, because there was certainly a part of me that thought that this could have been dragged out for way too long. And I think I tweeted that the Cowboys do need to move quickly on this. But I had kind of been holding out hope that they would, just simply because of all the things I just mentioned.
I think we all knew what was going to happen. And the only surprise was how fast it happened. And I think the Cowboys learned their lesson a little bit last year that you can't wait around for the coordinator guys, because there's other guys that are going to be getting jobs. You want to set up interviews. And if you wait a week, and I understand the idea of like, hey, let's give it some time. Let's let the season breathe a little bit, and then we'll make a decision. You're going to be lost, because I think teams are already lining up top guys that they want to have interviewed. I think you'll see teams make hires as soon as next week, and you can't get behind in the process. And kind of from everything we've heard, the Cowboy coaches, some of them knew on Monday that it was going to happen. They made it official on Tuesday, but it had to happen. I mean, this is the worst Cowboy defense in franchise history. Go ahead. I know you got some numbers. Why don't you go ahead and give them to us right now?
I mean, it's so much worse than the Cowboys, just the worst Cowboys defense in history. I mean, I think I just had some tweets that I just wanted to kind of read out that really sum it up. So I was making sure that everyone is getting their source. Brian Baldinger said that the Cowboys surrendered more TDs than any other defense after 17 games, 59 touchdowns the defense gave up. The next worst was the New York Jets at 56. Aaron Schatz, who does great stuff, you guys should definitely check him out, said the Dallas Cowboys finished with the 4th worst defense in the history of DVOA. That has been going since, I think they went all the way back to before I was born. I think 1978 is how far that they've got records going back. So they are the 4th worst in NFL history, but based on a DVOA history, the worst in the last 25 years by far. Ian Harris quickly tweeted out that the Jets had 4 turnovers this season, famously only zero interceptions. If I'm not mistaken. But the Commanders and the Cowboys each also turned in bottom 12 all-time seasons. The Commanders had 10 turnovers. The Cowboys only had 12 turnovers this entire season. And then finally, our buddy Joe Hoyt tweeted out earlier today that the Cowboys were dead last in most points allowed. He had a graphic on there in all time. It's historically bad. And I feel like we've talked about the Cowboys having historically bad defenses before, but the numbers don't lie. Like that's just, and it's like we said, it's so bad that it's more than just one person. It's more than just the defensive coordinator. It's obviously huge personnel problems here as well, but it had to start with the defensive coordinator. We had to start here first with getting rid of Eberflus before we can take any kind of steps towards improvement.
And I think the other thing that's concerning for me, I mean, they played bad team defense all year long. We know that. But
Yeah.
like even individually, was there anybody on this team in 2024 that got better in 2025? Because I would make the argument like I thought Maris Leafau took a step backwards. I think both Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker played worse this year.
Yes.
I think Deron Bland probably played about the same, maybe a little bit worse. Now his could be injury related. Uh,
Mhm.
I just don't know if there's anybody that performed better than we thought. Again, I think not having Micah Parsons probably made an impact on that as well.
Obviously.
No development, and I think that's the big thing for me coming out of the season. It feels like you wasted a whole season playing some veterans like Kenneth Murray, who just aren't going to be part of your long-term plans. And it feels like such a waste. And I mean, there was just such a lack of development on defense that I think you had no choice but to move on.
Yeah, I mean, all these guys, these younger players who, we had expectations for taking a step because we'd seen, learning curves and improvement from some of these guys. I mean, just think about simply the defensive end position, right? Like Sam Williams and with Nealon before, unfortunately, what happened with him. Just like they just didn't see any kind of players taking any development steps. And that's why you had street free agents like James Houston and eventually Clowney coming in and being the dominant snap getters on the defensive end, because you just didn't see any development or any sort of light coming on for these younger players, right? They weren't being taken advantage of. Their skill set wasn't being taken advantage of in this defense. And I think the other thing that you watch outside of just development is just not an inability to make adjustments, right? To see that things aren't working, or to see that this guy or that guy hasn't made the improvement that you thought that they would from season to season. And then, adjusting snap counts or adjusting the way that you're playing to help kind of promote those guys to play better. It just felt like they were putting, copying and pasting some boilerplate defensive plan week in and week out, until finally you had the head coach kind of storming in the defensive coordinator's office, demanding that they do more blitzing, and then just kind of half-heartedly doing it, and obviously being still bad at that because it was them operating left-handed as a defense. So yeah, I mean, there's just nothing positive that you could. I mean, that's, I guess, the question is, like, obviously there's piles and piles of negative that you can point towards, but what was Eberflus's defense like, other than just like what happened to him at the beginning of the season with Parsons, leaving? What can you hang your hat if you're Eberflus? What do you hang your hat on any performance on any form, or at what angle?
No, because he was hired as, I mean, kind of a linebacker guru, like somebody who has gotten his linebackers to play above expectation. They had the worst linebacker play in the league, maybe outside of Cincinnati. That's the only other team that had linebackers this bad. You brought him in because you thought he could help you stop the run, and that's why you made the trade for Kenny Clark. You traded for Quinton Williams. And Landon, they were worse this year stopping the run than they were last year. So like they just got worse in every phase. And again, maybe it's not 100% Matt Eberflus's fault, but I want defensive coordinators who are problem solvers. When they've got injuries, they're able to mask those injuries. They're able to find creative solutions to creating pressure or stopping the run or getting some really good quarterbacks to second guess their reads. That never really happened at any point this season.
Yeah, and look, there's a time and a place for simplified defense. I mean, look, the Houston defense is not extremely complicated. It works well, but obviously that's different because they have incredible personnel there that they're leveraging. I think the point being ultimately that, kind of an inability to make adjustments, to recognize, that your own defense is struggling, and frankly, seemingly an unwillingness, to make the changes necessary. I think that, and again, this was a multifaceted problem, as we said, and it requires a multifaceted solution, which includes, yes, replacing the defensive coordinator and also a bunch of personnel. So this was just the first part in what's going to be a clearly a multi-step, multi-phase rebuild of this defense.
The other thing that was notable from Tuesday was the players' reaction. And I think that generally tells the story of what was going on in Dallas. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Ultimate QB. Hey guys, the draft pick positions are set, and so many teams are looking for their next franchise quarterback. And do you ever wish that you could become a pro quarterback getting drafted by, let's say, the Dallas Cowboys? Well, now you can, and there's a mobile game for you called Ultimate QB, football legend. In this game, you step into the cleats of a number one draft pick, and it's your job to lead your team to greatness, to help turn a failing franchise into a dynasty. This is the number one career mode game mode on the mobile app stores right now, and it introduces the most realistic environment with full career control. You can sign contracts, you can train, you can upgrade yourself, you can build chemistry, and so much more. You deal with all of the ups and downs of a quarterback career, from rookie nerves to playoff drama, and every choice shapes your football journey. Ultimate QB is totally free to play, no ads, and works 100% offline. Perfect when you just want to sneak in a quick game or two on the go. So head over to ultimate-qb.com. That is ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in the App Store. And we've got something special for you guys. Use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll in the game store, and you'll get a free boost to start your career. That is Ultimate QB, football legend, QB1. It's your legacy. This episode is brought to you by ZocDoc. Finding a doctor that you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. You want someone in network, nearby, with availability, but you also want a doctor who really listens and makes you feel comfortable when you're leaving that visit, that you're on the right track. Your diamond in the rough exists, and finding them is easy with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high quality in-network doctors so you can choose someone that you truly connect with. I love that you can search for a symptom and quickly find the right doctor and the right fit. And being able to choose in-person or video visits makes scheduling so much easier. So stop putting off those doctor appointments. Go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor that you love today. That's ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL. And thanks to ZocDoc for sponsoring this message. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. If you haven't done so already, check out the Everydayer Club. For just $5 a month, you can get ad-free episodes to this podcast and an exclusive Discord server access where you can come chat with us all day long. Go to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com. All right, Landon, let's talk about the players' reaction, because we saw a Instagram post for Quinnen Williams saying that big things are coming. We saw a couple other players reaching out and basically saying, hey, they're really excited about the upcoming year. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, and someone else actually posted all the likes of Quinnen's original IG post, and it was everybody. It was Cooper, it was DeMarvion, Overshown, Wanye Thomas, CeeDee Lamb, Osa, Logan Wilson, Donovan Ezraku. I mean, basically everyone liked it. So, clearly. And look, I mean, obviously Diggs had his problems too with what was going on with the dude's coordinator.
He just was a little bit louder about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think he was a little more in the fourth round because of the way he was playing too. But yeah, I just think that it's clear. This kind of thing kind of happens too when there's turnover and there's excitement, and it's easy to kind of turn and blame the defensive coordinator. I think a lot of these guys that are actually on this list as well didn't have great seasons themselves. They didn't necessarily play well either. So like we said, this is a multifaceted issue. There's going to be some changes on the personnel side things as well. Personnel being like actual personnel, not the personnel department. And I think that this, like I said, there's going to be more changes along these lines. But the fact that obviously that there's this kind of resounding cry from the team and both sides of the ball too, right? Kind of points to the fact that there was a lot of agreement amongst the players as to where at least part of the problem lies.
I just can't imagine a player like, let's say, Odighizuwa, who played with Dan Quinn for the first 3 or 4 years of his career. He plays with Mike Zimmer, last year, and then you've got Eberflus this year. Like, it's a lot of changeover, but it's also very different personalities, all three of them. And this is the next kind of question I had for you is, we're going to go through some names of some potential candidates. But if you're the Cowboys, I know it seems so easy to say, let's just get the best candidate in here and we'll go that way. But is there a part of you that wants a guy that can come in, that can establish a scheme that you can have for the next several years, because I think this is one of the problems the Cowboys have had the last few years
Yeah.
is you're drafting for 3 different schemes. Mike Zimmer and Dan Quinn want different things than what Matt Eberflus wants. Eberflus wants different things than what Quinn wants. Do you value the guy that maybe has kind of given up the head coach aspirations and just wants to be a defensive coordinator? Or do you go with the up and coming young guy that, if it goes well, might be out of here in a year or two?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a question. And look, I think ultimately you're trying to kind of chase those guys a little bit, but ultimately too, like a lot of times those guys start out one way and then they have some success and the buzz starts happening and then maybe they change their mind anyway. So, I do think that to kind of answer the question though, that if you can find someone who at least is stating that that they've look, I've had my shot as a head coach. I'm looking to just kind of be a defensive coordinator, and I'm looking for a stable situation. And there's lots of those situations in the NFL. I mean, obviously Spagnuolo is in one of those kind of situations. It feels like, though, we're hearing his name as well as a sneaky coaching candidate as well. So I do think that it's an advantage, and if you're looking at candidates and their situations, it could be a tiebreaker, right? Because I do think that if you're the Joneses, you have to be looking at the situation of all the turnover you've had at defense coordinator, and it must increase the value of the opportunity to have some stability there and to have just kind of a consistent scheme there. So I think that there's probably going to be 3 or 4 of those types of candidates coming up in this coaching cycle. It'll be interesting to see, right? But I think it's a part of the problem that you deal with when you're kind of fishing in that pool of former head coaches that got their jobs by being great coordinators that are looking to kind of rehabilitate their resume, a la Dan Quinn, because those guys ultimately are looking to get back in the big seat. They're looking to get back into the head coaching job. So they're a little bit rare. And even the guys that you feel like that are past their opportunities, past their chances, they may not feel that way. And so once things start to change, and if they do kind of develop your defense, it may not happen as quickly as a Dan Quinn situation. But maybe down the road, once you've kind of built things around, they may get that itch.
Well, so. I just look at someone like Dan Quinn, who the Cowboys had. He was here for 3 years. He takes a head coaching job, but it felt like during those 3 years, we started to build like a prototype of what he wanted at defensive end and what he wanted at safety and linebacker. And it makes it easier to draft and develop these guys, right? And this is why, some of these guys got lost in the shuffle a little bit, going from Quinn to Zimmer, and then even more from Zimmer to Eberflus. And this is why I have a feeling, even though they've been connected with someone like Brian Flores, they might go with a more, I don't want to say traditional, because that's not the right word, but like a system that's easier to adapt to. Like, I'll give you an example, like Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz runs a wide 9-4-3 defense. It's pretty easy to replicate right now. I think he's a really good play caller, but if he were to leave or to retire, I think you could find somebody else to kind of step into those shoes. You hire Flores, he runs a very unique system. And if he leaves, you're probably resetting the entire thing again.
Yeah, and that kind of, was the unfortunate part of the Zimmer situation, right? Is that Zimmer would be closer to the Flores type of ball coach, right? Where he has kind of a very specific system and he's trying to install it. And it was really unfortunate he only got 1 year to do it here, right? But what it really did was kind of hurt that continuity that from Quinn, right? It just completely disrupted it. And then you try to kind of flop back to something that's sort of similar to Quinn, but obviously not that similar. And it just really kind of wrecks the year-to-year continuity. You're right that like it would be nice to kind of find somebody who, if you're not going to go get a Flores or have him here long-term, which again, that presents its own problems, then to find somebody who runs a defense that is not going to be, if they're going to leave, if they're going to go be a head coach somewhere, it isn't going to be so difficult to kind of transition away from, and is maybe at least generic enough that you can get to another defensive coordinator system without having to reinvent the wheel like you did the last few times you changed coordinators.
You and I later this week are going to do a deep dive on some of our favorite coordinators and why they would fit in and some of their strengths and weaknesses. But let's run through some names that have been at least mentioned in connection with the Cowboys DC job. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour, and opening the app during the happy hour gives you something new every single weekend between boosts, bonuses, and surprises. And it's easy to track all of the specials right before tip-off. So before the game gets started, check out the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. All right, Landon, let's run through some names here that we've heard in connection with the Cowboys. Diana Rossini from The Athletic again mentioned Brian Flores as an option for the Cowboys. That is somebody that we've talked about a bunch on this podcast, and I'm still very intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with Cody from Match Quarters about it a little bit, and I do think he brought up some points that we do need to mention here that are potential downsides, and it's a little bit what we just talked about, right? It's the complexity issue with this defense. It takes a little while to kind of get going because you have to install it, and there's so much to it. There's so much complexity. We just talked about how it's really kind of unique. So there is a real learning curve to this defense. But if you're talking about, what's healthy for your defense long term, if you feel like you can get Brian Flores in a situation where he's an extremely high paid defensive coordinator and he's happy doing that for an extended period of time, then I really do think that it's in the best interest of the long-term health of your team to try to get him long-term and see if you can meet that transition. It may push your kind of timeline out a little bit because you don't know exactly how quickly you're going to get to the returns that you need or that you're looking for from a Brian Flores defense. But the hope is that in the meantime, you can at least get to like a midway level defense right. So that you can win some ball games as you're trying to improve to become, upper echelon defense, hopefully with Brian Flores as your defense coordinator.
A couple other names, Jim Schwartz, who is the Browns defensive coordinator. Now the Browns fired Kevin Stefanski. We have heard reports that the Browns would like to keep Jim Schwartz. They might even interview him to be their head coach. But I think Schwartz is somebody who would make a lot of sense in Dallas as well.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, kind of a wide 9-4-3 guy, plays a lot more of a mixture of man and zone coverage than obviously Eberflus does. I would say closer to a Quinn type of defense, except does different, kind of more unique stuff with the defensive end. So, a very interesting guy who's run a ton of successful defenses. Obviously, a longtime Eagles assistant as well. So, hated him when he was there. So, certainly would love to see him wearing a Cowboys blue.
Players love him. He's got an attitude about him that I think players really like. A couple other ones. Raheem Morris. He was somebody that we kind of talked about a few weeks ago. He's officially been fired by the Falcons. Yeah. He was the defensive coordinator with the Rams a couple years ago. It's been a while since he's called plays, but he is somebody that is well respected as a defensive mind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to be given an opportunity multiple times to be a head coach as a defensive coordinator type, you have to be good. And he's coordinated some of the best defenses of the last 10 or 15 years at certain different points. Has opportunity to coach with Sean McVay, which I think is invaluable experience to be on the opposite side of one of those offenses and see it, kind of called every single day. Has a lot of interesting schematic kind of adjustments and has done a lot to kind of evolve over the years, which shows, I think, a good coaching prowess. So definitely a guy that I think the Cowboys should, kick the tires on a little bit. And I think, one of those guys that you mentioned potentially that could be a really good candidate that if you hired him, maybe you might have him for a little bit longer than some of these other situations because he's had multiple bites at the apple of being a head coach. Maybe he's just a defensive coordinator.
I got another name for you. I want to see if you can guess who this is. I'm going to name this coordinator's ranking in terms of yards over the last 6 seasons. 4, 3, 3, 3, 15. Do you know who this is?
Is it Jim Leonard's? Are you
not.
co-opting deep numbers? Yeah.
No, this is an actual defensive coordinator. For the last 5 years, 4, 3, 3, 3, 15.
Who is it?
Jeff Ulbrich, who is the Falcons defensive coordinator. He was the Jets defensive coordinator under Robert Saleh. He ended up
with White Cotton as well, right?
With White Cotton, which there's a connection there. If the Cowboys really like White Cotton and want to hold on to him, Jeff Ulbrich, again, out of his contract because they fired Raheem Morris. This is somebody who has been like an elite defensive play caller. And honestly, I love some of the things Atlanta was doing this year. You watch them against like Josh Allen and Matt Stafford. Pretty good guy that I don't think gets enough attention.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you've got an offensive offensive play caller head coach or a defensive play caller head coach, and they've handed over the play calling to one of their defensive or offensive coordinators that is of the same side of the ball, you always kind of perk up your eyes up there. And obviously, Ulbricht's a record, and where he's been from with where he was with the Jets, it speaks for itself there.
One more name before we go. I saw this name mentioned a couple times by some Cowboy insiders. Wink Martindale, who is currently the defensive coordinator at Michigan. Not particularly my style. I mean, he'll blitz the crap out of you for no rhyme or reason, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. But somebody who has coached in the NFC East before.
Yeah, and I think it's invaluable experience to go back to college and play, especially in the Big Ten, where you see kind of some interesting scheme stuff end up going up to it. So. I think it's an interesting name. I haven't really dove into his defense since he's been back.
We'll get back to him at some point.
Certainly someone to look into for sure.
All right, so we will continue to talk about the Cowboys defensive coordinator job because honestly, I think their ceiling probably depends on the right hire this offseason. So we'll dive into some of these guys, talk about how they would fit in Dallas. Make sure you guys are on the lookout for that. And if you never missed an episode, check out the Everydayer Club. It's built for you. Get Locked On Cowboys ad-free plus members-only Discord server access and so much more. Head over to lockedoncowboys.supercast.com to join the club. And for those of you on video, we can send you the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. And on audio, make your second listen to Locked On NFL podcast. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.